Hi, I'm Bill Landing. Thank you for joining me again on Interesting Individuals 2024. My guests today are involved with Dunebrook, and they are going to be working on certain things that deal with child abuse. With me today is Sarah Hoyt, Public Education Director at Dunebrook, and Kim Rager, Public Education Coordinator. Ladies, pleasure having both of you here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Okay. When Dunebrook decided to make child abuse a program for this year, what were the top priorities that you wanted to get across to the public?
I think, as always, just awareness. The more we talk about that it exists, the better equipped people are to recognize when it's happening, but also to know what to do, how to make a report, how to support a family. So I think really a big part of it is just conversation and awareness. So that we do as a society, as a community, know that it exists, so how can we help it?
All right, Kim, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree. I think child abuse in general, people don't want to tend to talk about it. They don't want to think that it exists, and unfortunately it is a reality. Sometimes it's a hidden situation, and so being able to raise awareness about the situation, having different events in the community, making sure that the community is aware that it is up to us to help protect kids, and kind of bringing back that burden on adults to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the Department of Child Services.
Yeah, so the Department of Child Services exists. It's an agency. It's a state-run agency. They are in charge of taking reports of abuse, and so they investigate those reports. Based on those investigations, they will open a case on a child if they feel that the child has been through some sort of abusive situation or neglected in some way. And then if that case is open, they would follow that case or that child to make sure that services are put in place for the family.
Is that when they contact you? Or Dunebrook, rather?
Yeah, so Dunebrook has a few different programs we offer. One of the things we have is what's called the Child Advocacy Center. So that would be a location where the child would come and explain in a child-friendly environment what's going on. So law enforcement would be there, someone from the Department of Child Services would be there, someone from our agency who's trained to talk with the child and get them to explain or possibly be able to tell what their story is. And so with that collaboration with local law enforcement, with the Department of Child Services, with Dunebrook, we're able to have those child-friendly conversations so that the child feels comfortable. From that point, either we sometimes stay involved. We have parenting education classes that we offer on site. Sarah and I do the body safety presentations in the school from preschool all the way through 12th grade.
Okay.
And then we also have another program. It's called Stewards of Children, which is educating community members on different types of abuse and how to recognize if a child is in an abusive situation.
And that's leading into my next question. There are different types of child abuse.
Yes.
Let's further elaborate on that.
Yeah.
So when we go into the schools, the 4 different types of abuse that we focus on is physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, and sexual abuse.
Okay.
And can probably provide more information about how DCS handles investigations for those. But in short, physical abuse is, intentionally hurting a child's body. And that results in a mark on the child's body of some kind. Emotional abuse, the way we explain it to the students is, repeated harassment or threats, saying, mean or hurtful things in a continued repeated fashion. So it's not just like you get in a fight with your parents and say things we don't mean. It's when a child is chronically exposed to those threats or those hurtful things. Neglect is when a child's not getting their basic needs met. So food, water, clothing, shelter, somebody to care for them, medical attention. And then sexual abuse, any forced sexual activity on a child, whether it be on them or another person.
Let me ask you this. I know foster homes exist. Is that an answer or no? I mean, are you both in favor of foster homes? And because then there can be abuse in those as well. So your thoughts on foster homes?
So I think foster homes are there for a reason. If a child's not able to stay in a situation where they are safe. So we've tried services, or for whatever reason, they're unable to remain in that environment and they don't have another place to go. So family hasn't stepped forward. They don't have other resources that the department can use. A foster home would be one of the last resorts. A lot of things have changed over the last few years within the state. So the initiative now is something called Family First Preservation, which is when they would put in services with the child in the home in the hopes that they would alleviate any of the concerns so that the child wouldn't have to be removed. To remove a child from a home, it's very traumatizing for that child and that family in general. And so it's because of that reason I think the state has pushed more towards putting in those intensive services, making sure that, you know, there are things available to that family before it gets to that point that the child would have to be moved.
Okay. You know, I'm going to assume that some children are afraid to speak up because it's kind of hard to go against your parent and say, look, my parent beats me. Or if I can just share a story from my grade school days, there was a boy that I had in class, and on the few occasions when I bumped into him out in the public and so forth with his parents, he had one parent who would call him stupid or criticize him for doing something wrong in front of other people. And I know that had to wear him down.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, how often do you get a child that's saying, reaching out for help and letting you know that they're being abused any way of the four ways you mentioned?
So I think, you know, it's hard to keep track of, you know, especially when we're going to all these schools or, you know, the other programs that we have at Dunebrook, you know, how many lives that affects and how many people might say something later down the line. But we absolutely do recognize that it can be incredibly difficult for a child to come forward, especially given that 90% of the time it is somebody they know. You know, we talk, you know, extensively about stranger danger, but 90% of the time the abuse is occurring by somebody that they're close with.
Right.
And so they're worried, are they going to get in trouble? Am I going to see this person again? So I think, again, just continuing to talk with not just children and students, but, you know, adults as well, that, you know, it's hard to say out loud and there's a lot of concerns and barriers, but just reminding them, supporting them, and encouraging them to find the help and support that's out there for them.
All right. And then how have you find most parents to be about this when you talk with them? When you have to talk to them about, you know, hey, you're abusing your child, you're doing this wrong for them or to them. So let's talk about dealing with the parents on this.
So I've worked in both capacities through the Department of Child Services and also in this job in more prevention side. It's not an easy conversation. Parents don't like to be told that something is off or is wrong. But part of that is educating. A lot of the times we parent based on how we were parented as a child. And so those generational things that come up. So if you possibly were in an abusive situation yourself, you have a higher tendency or likelihood to abuse a child because of something that you've witnessed or has happened to you.
I see. When they were growing up.
Right. And so it's because of those things. Sometimes it's just educating. We hear a lot about, well, I was spanked as a kid. And so for me to spank my child, that can't be detrimental because I turned out fine. And so what we know is that we are learning as the years go on and as studies have shown that there are what we call adverse childhood experiences. So those are experiences that lead to our ability to process things, and those adverse childhood experiences. So if we were in a broken home or part of a broken home, if our parents used drugs or some other substance around us, if they were abusive in some way, if we were sexually abused as a child, all of those things lead into how we then will parent our own kids. And so figuring out all of that leads into being able to explain, well, maybe this is something that you were taught at one point or someone did to you, and so you were feeling like this is something you have to do, or this is the only way you know how to parent your child. Mm-hmm. So giving those different explanations and understanding that it takes a village to raise a child, and sometimes all we need is maybe resources. So maybe necessarily they're not trying to neglect the child, but they need extra help. So
Sure.
community resources are there, food pantries, things like that, help with finances. So to get that parent or that situation back to where they are functioning. So difficult conversations, but I think the more that we have them, the more we bring things to light, and that's how we create change.
Get change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and talking again on all the different abuses, the mental abuse can be sometimes worse than a slap in the face.
Mm-hmm.
As I just mentioned about this young man. So what have you seen or heard about being some of the worst mental type of, you know, problems that children have faced?
Well, I think, you know, kids in this generation already struggle, so they have to deal with a lot of different struggles, you know, with the internet and being online and social media. So there's already that pressure out there, you know, that is heavy on their mental and emotional development. So, you know, we know that that's already a barrier that, you know, exists to them. But then if they're at home and they're, you know, being verbally abused,
Yeah.
that's another layer of stress to add on to them. And, you know, emotional abuse is hard to recognize because it doesn't leave obvious marks. But like you said, you know, emotional abuse, especially long-term chronic emotional abuse, can have a profound impact on their development. And we definitely see that. I think it manifests in a lot of different ways. But we definitely know after extensive research that a child that is exposed to chronic ridicule and put down and, you know, being told that they're worthless, that it affects their physical development, it affects their intellectual development.
Yeah. Do you find that, is it more a problem with either girls or boys, or is it about even?
I think it's kind of hard to say.
I think studies show lately that more online bullying and solicitation of children, those types of things, there's actually a higher trend for males lately for those types of things. And I think it goes back to the unknown is that most of the time these things are not reported. So we can think that it's one way or the other, but the realization is that unfortunately I feel like it happens pretty evenly.
And it's hard to say, and we know like one statistic that we share is, you know, over 2/3 of sexual abuse victims won't tell anybody. And that's true for a lot of different types of abuse. That's just a statistic that we know for that type of abuse. So yes, there is always that number of people that you know exist that are never going to say anything about it. So it's hard to track and how to really know who's being affected or impacted more.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's a sad thing about LaPorte County, and I'm sure both of you are aware of this already, that, you know, it's sort of a, I don't know what the percentage would be, but there's child molesting has been like the last 20 years. LaPorte County has had their share of child molesting cases.
Yeah.
Fortunately, those have been put away.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's, unfortunately, that's kind of high in LaPorte County.
It is, and I think that I know Kim and I feel fortunate to work for an agency that, you know, is very progressive in the way that we, you know, look at child abuse and the things that we utilize, the resources that we, you know, use to prevent it from happening, but also to prevent it from continuing to happen.
Yeah.
So yes, I think every county, and that's the hard part about abuse is it can happen anywhere, you know, and it can happen. It's not certain areas, rural or urban, is that abuse can occur anywhere. What stops it from happening or prevents it from continuing to happen is education and talking about it, and available resources is a big part of that.
So what's it been like going to the schools and meeting the kids?
It's great.
We do love it.
Yeah. I mean, we genuinely, I'm fortunate to have a coworker that really is passionate about it as I am. And we, you know, being in the schools is, I think, one of the most powerful things we can do on our end of it is actually going and talking face to face with them and having these conversations.
Well, what additional things can be done to get more people involved?
So, if anyone's interested in trainings, we are always willing and offering trainings to the community on different topics.
Okay.
We're offering a training currently on internet safety, so being able to recognize different apps or different slang that a child might be using. If they come to you and tell you about a dangerous situation that they encountered online, how to handle that. We also do what's called a Stewards of Children training, which is a 2.5-hour training that is geared towards giving information and understanding risks associated with sexual abuse of a child.
Okay.
And then we also do, we call it reporting training. So because normal people, I guess Joe off the street would not have ever had to make a report to DCS. Most people don't know how to do that. And so we do offer a short training for community agencies, for just people in general on how to make those reports, what information to have, what to stay away from if a child is, because people feel that they have to ask all the questions, or they may feel that they have to reach out to the person that's being alleged of abuse, and to keep that from happening so that the professionals can do their job and actually see things through so that charges can be filed if they need to be.
All right. Well, it sounds like there's quite a few things going on, approaching the different types of abuse there is in the classes, and speaking to the parents and everything. So you've got everything pretty well covered. Going to the schools, it must be fun too. Well, we found out about the child abuse program. This is Dunebrook's 35th year anniversary. Can you tell us a little bit what's going to be going on?
So we have a couple things coming up. One of the big things that we have is in October, and we'll be celebrating our 35 years. And what they're doing to celebrate that is kind of putting together a timeline of how Dunebrook came to be what it is. Starting with, former board members, the original crew who, not only invested their time, but actually physically built Dunebrook. And then also interviews with other former employees and people who have received services from Dunebrook, so that we can just kind of celebrate the opportunities and successes that we've seen through Dunebrook.
Good enough. Sounds like it's going to be great. How many people approximately work at Dunebrook?
Right now we have about 40 employees. We have a number of other volunteers. We have some interns that are doing social work type background or degrees, and so they will do some of their internships with us as well.
Okay.
So if anyone is needing those types of volunteer hours, we're always looking for volunteers to help out around the office or in general. So people can reach out to us and look for those volunteers as well.
All right. Well, Sarah Hoyt and Kim Rager of Dunebrook, thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you for sharing all of these things on child abuse. Let's hope that everything can steer on course and keep helping those children out. So,
Yes.
all right.
Thank you very much for having
Absolutely.
us.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Landing. That's this segment of Interesting Individuals. Hope you enjoyed our program. We'll see you again soon.